Okay, let's continue. Previously, the bug is caused by the version inconsistency. So the previous we installed the jest. We installed. Look at here. What we have installed is uh, this. It's just 30. That's probably the latest version of jest. But this version of jest not supported by the just export yet. Therefore, we have to downgrade to the early version. So currently we use just 29, right? To fix that, we need to install npm install just 29. We use this command to install that, and then the test will pass. We can try. Okay, npm test. Okay, it passed. There's one snap, one snapshot test, right? So this done test. Now we're doing the real test. We're going to test our app, right? Okay. Okay, let's check what's the app test function. Okay, we just run the app, right? And we match the snapshot. JSON render. Okay, expect to JSON dot to match snapshot. Okay, run this test. Okay, it passed, right? So it doesn't really do much. They just try to run this app and match the snapshot. The first time run this one is going to create a snapshot, right? You come here, you're going to see the snapshot. Okay, so here is a snapshot text, right? And this is a dummy one, the dummy text to snapshot. So for the UI testing, if you change the UI, right? If, so for example, here, open your app. If we change this, we probably remove this because the status is not a pure. The reason we have to remove the status because status bar maybe change the value based on timeout time, so that may cause the problem, right? And if we remove that, we're doing that, try to test. Okay, so that doesn't affect. If we change this one, app test, change the content. If we change this one, it fell, right? It fell. The reason is is test the app, they not match because originally they display that sentence, now it displays this one. So for the snapshot test, it means they try to test the UI, make sure the UI display as it saved in the snapshot. So this is not the error of this page, it's just because the page update, but we need to update this UI, right? To do that, we need to create this package. Use this test update, like this one. We use a test update, right? Test update. Now we need to npm test update. Run test update, because the npm test and npm start, so these two are special. You can execute them without the run command, but for the others, you need to take run. Right? Okay, now you can see one update, right? And you do the npm test again. So it will work, right? So two passed. And the last one we probably want to mention about the npm test is watch, right? Watch. So that means it's going to continuously doing the test. If you have something changed, it's going to do the update, right? So we can try this. Watch, right? So check this. Run test. Okay, so here, run all tests to run only the failed test. Okay. All test run, and W to show more, right? So if we change this again, failed, right? Failed. So we need to use update. We use U to update, right? And then we can try to run everything. It passed, right? So this just provide a quicker way for you to do the test. Okay, so we continue. Look at this snapshot test. Okay, so in the in the React native project, apart from the snap test, you can also do the unit test as we have done before, right? So we have this function here, we have this function in the other part. Okay, we probably just copy these two files from here. Copy. We copy this two file, and we probably copy the other two files to a folder. And copy this to copy copy the other file. Control C to the folder, right? Okay, the two test failed because this test they use the require, right? So we need to change them to import. From right, we need to change to there. Okay, one pass, right? And the other one we need to change this import from src function. Okay, all passed, right? So all the unit tests and also the snapshot test pass. Two snapshot pass, tested three, right? Okay. All right, so that shows the JavaScript, the jest testing for React Native project. All right, so we finished the testing part. This just React Native project. Now we look at this another part about today's this week's lecture is about simple form. Right? So simple forms are important web mobile application for React Native apps to collect user information like the user registration, login, right? So all the forms have small one, large one, so very common used for forms. So in this week, we just try to use a small project to demonstrate how to organize a simple form. But of course, for the large complex form, it could have involved more settings. It could be a very difficult sections of that. But for this course, we only try to cover the simple forms. That's enough for most of the applications, right? So to illustrate the form, I think it's probably easier we just look at the example. Okay, the example is explained in the lecture slide. We probably just go to look at the real example. So the simple form, you just click here, you get to this GitHub. You can download this one to play by yourself. We try to copy this and git clone that project. Okay, so we have the simple form, right? Install. Simple form. You play around and look at the code. So in this one, we have the apps here, right? Just simple form. So it doesn't hold much functions. It's called a simple form. And on here, we have the screen simple form, right? And in the simple form, they have two component, button and input. So that's the component used by the form. And also there's one constant use color, right? So this one is for what we call to control different color scheme, because for it's not must have this feature, but it could have, right? So because for some websites they allow the customer to customize their appearance of their interface, right? We look at this, how to do that, right? We have colors, they only have this two, right? The error 50, error 100, and then they have primary, the color keys. And we set up base color, right? So this RGB. So this one is more red, right? More red. And this function is going to convert this to RGB value for different of these colors, right? So adjust color, you call this adjust color, they're going to assign them to all these keys because these are keys, but they are not put into the colors. After you call this function, they're going to colors key equals the RGB color, right? RGB color. So this just different colors of the same scheme, right? Because we use the same RGB base setting, and all these just different uh, levels of that. So make the set of color scheme matching. Okay. Now we look at what it look like, right? So start. Probably are going to run the emulator, Android. Android emulator. Web data. And we run the emulator. Okay, the emulator started. Now we run this app. Okay, we try to see install, right? Simple form. Okay, the app has been installed, right? So run here. Look, so this is the red star. Right? If we change the color, if we put this red and blue, increase this to 100. See what happened. Okay, the color changed, right? If all the three are the same level, it's purely black and white, right? If we want to be more blue, we change this to 10, to 10. Okay, this more blue style, right? If we put the green, this to okay. You can see we're using this way to change the color scheme. You can play around with different settings, see what is right. So here this is just the function to create a set of colors. When your system component use them, you just use the color with this value, right? Okay. Right, so this is the color scheme. So it's not critical, but interesting to know, right? So if you want to have more customizable forms, you can use this. Oh, now we look at the component because for a form, the most important component is input, right? So in React Native, they provide input text as the component to take input, and we customize it to include it to make it easier to use, right? So we look at our input. So this is customized component, just handle input, right? So it's say input colors from that colors, right? And in this style, we can say use the background color, use colors primary 100, and the color use the color prime 700. So we don't use the absolute value of the colors, but rather makes color controlled by the color object. The others are just the same one. Okay, so this ski style. Look at this component here. So import text input view style sheet. So that's color, and export input. So the input take an object. So the object has label style, right? So the style is if we want to have extra control about the style, right? So we can use this style input styles and config. So there's other more configuration about how this input looks like. And this is in a special setting in red because look at our input. So this is normal, right? So if we put something submit, okay, so this color means that it's not valid, right? So if we input, because the amount is supposed to be a number, if we put 10, so that's normal, right? Submit, input are not valid. These two input fields are not valid, right? So if here, this is input text, okay, okay, check. The text. Now, only this section is not valid, right? That needs to have a date. Date is in this format. You can see this style is different. That means they have error. Here they have the error message. 2026 5, right? Submit. Okay, everything looks good, right? So this time the form is totally valid. So this is valid or not is depend on this input. So this invites true, so that means displayed as green, right? And here they check the config, right? Because for some of the input, most of the inputs are just one line, but for some of them they have multiple lines, right? So input style, if exists this config and config multiple line, this can be simplified by just using this. The reason why we need to check the reason is because sometimes the caller may not pass config. So if that's undefined, you directly call config.multiline. They're going to give you error because config is undefined. So use this question mark to tell the system if it exists. We check if it's multi-line, right? So that okay. So that will be the same as if config and then the config.multiline. If it has multiline, the input style push the style.input multiline. Look here, input multiline, right? So they just get this kind of extra style, right? Okay, if we don't have this, right, you can see that description, they become only one line, right? So that is not good because okay, it's still okay. We can use the return to increase the size. But if we have this, by default they already have that. If this can still increase the size, okay, because we haven't set the absolute size of that yet, so it can increase. But let's control here. Then we have view, input container style, and label. Label is something displayed on here, right? So we will display label first, text, and also you check if that's invalid, and we use the invalid style, right? If we don't have this, see, that's going to be that, right? So that even in the normal state display as right. So here, because they are not invalid, so they displayed as this color, right? Okay, and then we have text input. So input style, similarly, if there's invalid, we have invalid background, right? Invalid background, red background, right? Okay. If we try to see that, if put here, see background here, right? So if you still have other config, they just put here because text input take a lot of configuration, right? What we don't use in this one. So, but if the user can pass, they can pass through this config, right? So that's input component. And look style button. Okay, we look at the button. So we don't use the system button because system button is the style cannot matching our color scheme. If we want the button matching our color scheme, we just use the our button, right? So the pressable style pressed. If it's pressed, they have pressed. So let's see if the pressed, you can see the color slightly change, right? Okay. Okay, that's just the bottom reuse and the children is something in here you can pass into that part, right? So this is a view text, button text here. Children is the text in this part, but because as children, so it's not possible. But text is also possible. You can have some other component like images and so on, right? So that just give the possibility. Children unpass, so that is a function passing by the parent. So you click here and you're going to call unpressed, going to call this unpressed. So the unpressed processed by the parent. Okay. Now we look at the simple button, right? Initial value. Okay. So we look at this simple button, simple form here, right? Okay, because for the simple form, we have the form. The form has three input values, right? So we have initial value, amount. So it's valid true. So initially we put is true, right? Therefore, once it comes to this page, everything looks normal. When the true value, right? Value. And then we have the simple form input, set input. So here is takes some skills, right? Because we have three values. So what we have learned before, we may use state for three values. One is for amount, set amount. One is the date, set date, and so on. So if we, for three input field, we use three states, so that will be too many, right? Three is probably manageable. If you do a complex form, they have 20 input field, and then you're going to have 20 use state, so make the logic too complex. Therefore, we just use summarize together as input, right? And use state in initial value, so initial value like this. So all the three different input field only managed by one state, right? And form is valid, initially it's true, right? But if you submit here, is valid is false, you're going to show form are not valid. Please check your input value, right? Okay. And also for the input handler, input change handler, usually if we have changed this amount, we just set the amount change. But now we only have one handler to handle all the changes, right? So therefore, we have to have this handler have two arguments. One is value, another is input indicator, identifier, right? Input identifier tell the system which input field has been changed. The three of them use this to indicate which one is changed, and this is a new value, right? And set input current value return the new value. Use the destruction, the current value, and the input indicator, right? That could be amount, date, description, right? Could be any of them, and the value here, and it's valid true, right? So you can see this is a skill to manage multiple number of input items, right? So if form have 20 input items, it's still the same function to manage all of them. Now there's function we need to explain that validate data. So for the form, usually it means to submit something to the backend. So they have to validate if the data input in the form are valid, right? So usually they have two different validation. One is in the front end, in the client side, you validate data. Like if you input credit card, you need to check if the credit card, the number of digits is correct. If you input the email, check if the format of email is correct. But the front end validation only be able to validate the format, right? Validate the credit card uh, format of the credit card number is correct or not, but not able to validate if this credit card is really can be used. That usually lead to the backend validation, right? So the validation usually performed in both front end and back end. Front end usually only validate the format, and the back end may validate the real values. So here is the front end validation by the data. We have the data here, right? So this data is input. Amount is valid. Say if the data dot amount not is not a number, not is not a number, means must be a number, right? And also data amount larger than 0. So that means this must be a number and also must be larger than 0, right? So if put 20, submit this valid, right? If you input minus 20, submit is not valid, right? Date is valid, so date use data.date to string, not invalid date, right? So because we use the date object, if data object to string is not invalid date, so that is here, right? So if we input okay, so that's right. So if we put 40 here, okay, it's still valid. I think this shouldn't be, but anyway, put here the format. If the format is not right, they come here. I think the 40 they're probably going to convert to November or something, right? I don't know. But anyway, they use the internal data to string to check if this is a valid data. And description is valid. We only check trim this length larger than 10, right? So it's very simple. If you input this not valid, but if long enough, valid. We just expect the description is longer than 10, right? And set input current rate, current one, we check the amount, still the amount, but it's valid, we put this value, right? So if that value is true, this return true. If this value is false, return false, right? So this is how we are able to update the valid or not for each of the input element. Use this set current one, this date, right? Description here, right? And also we have the total valid, the form value means this and means all the three are valid, and the form is valid, right? Okay, this form is still not valid because this amount is invalid. If we put this to here and submit, okay, set form is valid, right? Here. So cancel handler. So this is very simple. They just change this to initial state, right? So if change here, initial state, right? So here we change initial here. Okay. On submit handler, we data we do a convert amount equals because that's the original input is string. We use plus to convert it into a number, right? Date we use a new date to convert the string into a date object, and description we just use description dot value, right? So if validate data, alert. If validate that means there's everything all right, alert, everything looks good, right? Because this simple form is demonstration, it's not communicate with backend. In a real application, come to here, they're going to send this data to the backend to process, right? So there's control section. And look at the view section, form, title, my simple one, right? So my simple form, uh, panel, this part is panel, input, label is amount, invalid. Here, style, config, decimal pad, placeholder, right? Value, so on change text input handler, right? You can see the input change handler band. The first is now that this we don't have this in a function, and band with amount, right? So so this is a function passing to this part, this input, right? And once this input is pressed, they're going to bind this value to here, right? They call input handler. They call the they call the input change handler, right? And the first argument already bound to amount, right? When they call this one, it's bound to that. Okay, so you can see that's the very useful skill. Use the band, and this function band this with the first argument already bound here, right? So the input section, because when the input section they on price, they only pass in one variable back, one argument back. So the argument is that input value, right? So the indicator is amount. Similarly for the date, here, right, the placeholder input value and this band to date, right? And max length 10, right? So they can use extra config. If you put, you cannot input more than 10, right? So just give a little bit more control. And for the description, this one config multiple line true, right? We just put it to capital, auto capitalize. We don't want to. You can add more controls here. And similarly, input change handler, the button to description. And if not form is valid, we're going to show input are not valid, right? And also we button comment. Okay, so that's all. So for this simple form, they have a validation, but if they have errors, they're going to explain here, right? But you can, for some more advanced form handling, they not only show this field is not valid, they also give explanation, right? So if you want to do that, you can modify the component input. You take this and add something like error message, right? If invalid, and then they're going to display something like the error message. Display some, right? It's the error message. But of course, this is usually is invalid and error message. Right. Okay. Sorry. This is. It should be. should be that. Okay. Okay. What do I have? No, not this one. Invalid and error. Oh, okay. Sorry. Here I need to have this. Yes. So if you want to improve this one for each of the, if the item is not valid, you would also want to see the error message why this input is not valid, right? Because here it only explains the whole form is not valid. This three item got problem, but not say what you can use this way. And but of course, validator need to pass in the error message to here, right? Okay, but for this course, we probably not go that deep. Okay, you can, if you like, you can try it by yourself. Okay, so that is the form validation function result, right? The last topic today is about the modal, right? This, how to pronounce this? Modal, right? This model. I, I, I don't know, but it looks very similar, but the concept are not the same. This model means the data model, right? That's like you create airplane, you create a small one, the model, right? Looks like the real, but it's smaller one, data model. Here is this kind of a model is a temporary layered screen appear in front of your app, right? So in our uh, in our app, we not really need that, but you can use them if you like. This kind of design gave them more control. Look like this. If we submit this false, right, the error, and if we write something, something like that, and put this 10, put this, right? See, this is actually a kind of model, but this is the model. This is the system building model used alert, right? So because it's appear here, so the temporary layer above this, you can still see the background, but it becomes weak, right? Transparency like that. Use this, and also you lost control on them. Press OK, go back, right? See, so that's kind of that. But sometimes you can create customize this temporary layered screen, right? So we look at this example. So for this one, I probably just try to type the code in our current one, see if we are able to do that exercise, right? Okay. Okay, now we just try to demonstrate the modal part, right? We import modal from React Native, and we add a modal visible as parameter here, right? So nothing changed. So this part not changed, and until here we have a new button. Okay, a new button. So show model, right? So if this change priced, we set model visible true, right? To make it appear. And then we have this model component here, right? Model component. This model means this usually not display only when the transparent, only when the visible is true. The visible is model visible. So the initial value is false, right? So the initial value is false. So only when we press this button, show model set true, right? So it's true and transparent true, right? On request close, we become false. For the model itself, it's very simple. We have two views, and then we have text. This is the model. Button unpressed, set it false, right? So we look here, show model, show this part, right? You can see this transparent background, close, show back, right? So this can be more complex. If you want, you can put another form in here if you like, just to replace this section. But in our example, we just use this one to demonstrate that. Okay, I'm probably going to commit this into our website. Therefore, when you download, then you get this model section as well. So here is just the style for the model and the model containers, right? The rest is all right. Okay, I'm probably going to, yes, I'm going to add this into the repository. So when you download that, you will be able to play around with that. So that's for the model. And after that, right, so the model advanced, we can use React Native model, right? So that's the third-party library. This support more advanced models, but for simple one, we just use built-in models from the React Native, right? So that's what we use. Here they have more advanced one, but it's just for your reference. If you want to make even fancy appearance app, you can try this one, right? Okay, that's all for this week. For the challenge, I probably just try to read by yourself, and you can play around based on this. See if you're able to solve this JavaScript exercise, right? Not very difficult, but if you like, you can have a try. That's all for this week's lectures. Thank you for watching, and see you next week. Bye bye.